As early as 3 days ago, the two children came back covered in bruises, and Fugaka scolded them severely. He also warned the two not to provoke ninja dogs again, lest the villagers laugh at the younger generation of the Uchiha clan who couldn't even beat a dog. But now, the reputation of their Uchiha clan has been completely ruined by these two people. Whenever the villagers talk about Uchiha, the first thing that comes to mind is not the Uchiha Madara who defected, nor the geniuses Shisui and Itaki in the tribe, but it's his two little sons who are chased by dogs every day. Recently, the relationship between the family and the village has become increasingly tense, and he can hardly suppress the restless tribesmen. This happened at this time, and Fugaku was really afraid that his two sons would become the fuse for conflict with the village. In addition, out of consideration for his reputation, if he asked people to stop it, it would not only be embarrassing, but it would also make the third generation wonder if the Uchiha clan was deliberately causing trouble. It is not right to stop it, and it is not right not to stop it. Fugaku thought about his eldest son who was against him all day long, and his two younger sons who didn't practice well and hung out with ninja dogs every day. It is really a family misfortune. Father, I know, Sasuke flopped to his knees, looking down and stammering, ready to admit his fault. There was no way out. Knowing his father's character well, if he opened his mouth to defend himself, it would only make his father even angrier. Yan, who was standing nearby, met Fugaku's gaze and took a step forward to stand in front of Sasuke. At this moment, Sasuke looked up at Yan's back, which seemed to be shining brightly. This guy, yeah. Do I have to shoulder all the responsibilities alone? However, the moment Yan opened his mouth, the emotion that had just surged in Sasuke's heart was immediately shattered. Sasuke is too weak. I took him for special training. Fighting a ninja dog is nothing shameful. Besides, Sasuke is very strong now. If you don't believe me, try practicing on him. Sasuke? Yan said this in a righteous manner, but in fact he was silently praying for Sasuke in his heart. Sorry, silly give. The fight for the crown prince has always been like this. You should be the one to attract the firepower. Just consider it as repayment for my helping you practice these past few days. Hearing this, Sasuke raised his head blankly, looked at Yan who was bowing with shock, and turned to look at his father who was about to get angry. I was already very nervous when I made mistakes, and now this has happened, I am even more at a loss. Sasuke was very touched that Jin took on the main responsibility alone, and he also wanted to get his father's approval. But he really didn't want it to be done this way. When Fugaku heard about Sasuke's recent strength, he looked a little disapproving, thinking that it was just an excuse for the two kids to have fun. After all, you two are both orthodox Uchiha, and have nothing to do with the ninja dogs or the Inyazuka clan. And ninja dog training and stuff, no matter how you listen to it, it's outrageous. Nonsense. Are you saying that you two are now strong enough to challenge me? Did you know? Fugaku started scolding, but Yan raised his hand to interrupt his old father. All right, father, this is the end of the matter today. Eat first. Fugaku? Sasuke. Yan's tone was more serious than Fugaku's as a father, and there was even a hint of role reversal in his tone. Even Fugaku was a little dazed. Am I the father or are you? When Sasuke heard Yan talking to his father like this, he was so shocked that he could hardly close his mouth, and sweat kept flowing down his cheeks. It took Fugaku a long time to react. His face turned black and he was furious. Bang! The wooden coffee table broke, and Fugaku exuded a powerful aura. It seemed that a scene of loving father and filial son was about to take place. Uchiha Hiko. Crash! Fortunately, at this time Mikato pushed open the door of the living room and smiled gently when he saw the father and his two sons. Honey, the food is ready, let's eat first. After saying that, she waved to Sasuke and Hiko. Go wash yourself, you stink. When Sasuke saw his mother, he rushed behind her as if he had seen a savior and ran to the bathroom without looking back. As for that damned fellow Yan, he doesn't care. Seeing Sasuke running first, Yan quickly hid behind his mother, but stopped when he reached the door and spoke slowly to his father inside. Sasuke, not a wimp. In Fugaku's eyes, Sasuke is not only spoiled by Itaki all day long, but also has Yan to take care of him, which causes this guy to cry whenever he encounters a little setback. He didn't even dare to raise his head when facing himself. His personality is totally different from other children in the tribe. All of this was naturally seen by Yan. He could only say that the entire Uchiha, and even the entire ninja world, had something wrong with their brains. His younger brother Sasuke is the only normal person. For example, Sasuke's talent is clearly in the lightning chakra, but Fugaku insists on nurturing him towards the fire style. What's the result? Uchiha Itaki is a beginner in fire style, and the range of his fire style is about 10 meters, almost the same as that of Fugaku. He considered himself to be averagely talented, and the first time he learned fire style, his spray range was only about 5 meters. But Sasuke, when you first start learning, you can only spray out a small flame. It seems like Fugaku has been disappointed with Sasuke ever since. Snort. The Uchiha clan has lost all its face because of these unfilial sons. Fugaka still had a stern face, but when he heard what Yan said when he left, his brows relaxed a lot. Mikato also found it funny to see her husband's appearance. Fugaku was not good at expressing himself, but he cares a lot about his 3 sons. Whenever he wants to communicate something, he is too embarrassed to have a serious talk with his sons. After a while, Fugaku turned his head to look at his wife, not sure whether he was asking her or himself. Mikato, am I being too harsh? Ha ha ha. Mikato covered her mouth and chuckled, raised her hand and pointed outside the door, and said playfully, then you have to ask the children. But Yan the child, sometimes he's even more thoughtful than Itaki. When Fugaku heard this kid, his expression, which had just relaxed, instantly fell again. Don't mention him to me. You didn't even know what that boy's attitude was just now. Not long after, Sasuke and Yan finished their showers and sat at the dining table. Itaki was said to have a mission and would not be back for the next few days, so he did not come back to eat. During the whole process, Sasuke was concentrating on eating like crazy, as if finishing the meal quickly would help him avoid being beaten. Yan acted like he didn't care. After all, getting beaten up it started when he was 3 years old, when he found his father's secret money under his bed. I'm done. After Sasuke finished eating, he put down his chopsticks, bowed slightly to the others, and turned around to flee the restaurant. Wait. At this time, Fugaku called out to Sasuke, but his eyes were fixed on Yan, who was sitting in the seat. It seems like it's been a long time since I last tested your practice. Fugaku felt that this was a bit hypocritical, and added a sentence at the end to explain his purpose. Ahem, you guys will be starting school soon. I hope you won't embarrass me in school then. Humph. Follow me. Knowing they couldn't escape, the 2 brothers followed Fugaku obediently and headed to the training ground in the hospital. It is indeed a happy thing that their father can take the time to test their cultivation. As the patriarch of the clan, the father was considered free when he could just stay at home and have a meal with them, not to mention accompanying them in practice or anything like that. But Sasuke couldn't be happy at all. Among the 3 brothers, Itaki's talent is beyond Sasuke's reach, and he is the one he idolizes. But Sasuke knew that he was not as talented as his brother. Yan is also very talented. Even his brother and father have expressed admiration for him. The first ninjutsu the 2 brothers learned was the fire-style Great Fireball technique, and Sasuke had to learn it many times before he could spit out a flame. And that guy Yan, he was able to successfully perform a ninjutsu by sealing his hands with just one look, and even said in a mean way that even dogs wouldn't learn something like Great Fireball and other similar remarks that deserve a beating. This is enough to show Yan's extraordinary talent. However, despite this, Yan was always slack and lazy in his daily practice. His father never praised him because of this, and Sasuke couldn't help but feel inferior when facing Hiko and Itaki. Now it was time for his father to test his skills, and Sasuke couldn't help but feel hesitant, worried that he wouldn't perform well later. Seeing that the boy was in a low mood, Yan put his hand on his shoulder and said in a mean tone, "Oi, my fish-lipped Udaudu. The battle hasn't even started yet, are you already feeling scared?" He is not good at saying pretentious things, so he can only say a few words to provoke Sasuke. As for Sasuke's talent, in the early stage, it is really hard to see anything, especially when the whole clan offered sacrifices to the heavens and opened a Megatama in anger. It was really difficult to imagine. But if you say he has no talent, he can still become one of the 2 most powerful Hokage in the end. In response to this, Yan could only say that his younger brother's talent has not yet been fully revealed. Take the physical training I did a few days ago as an example. Sasuke's improvement is almost catching up with the benefits brought by his own 200% bonus. Yan felt that this situation was very similar to those unknown people in his high school class in his previous life, but in the last period of the college entrance examination, these people suddenly jumped into the top 10 as if they had cheated. It's really hard to understand. I'm your brother. Sasuke slapped the hand on his shoulder and emphasized his identity as an older brother again. Yan didn't know why this boy always liked to dwell on this. He lowered his head and put his hands in his pockets, quickening his pace and quickly putting some distance between himself and Yan. As he was almost behind Fugaku, Sasuke didn't know whether he was encouraging himself or showing his determination. I won't lose. Yan, I will definitely catch up with you and Nissan. Fugaku's eyes lingered on Sasuke for a moment when he heard this, and he could tell that Sasuke was under a lot of pressure. But he won't say much. Sometimes this kind of pressure is not a bad thing. You guys come together. Fugaku put his hands behind his back and called on the 2 brothers to go straight ahead, but his eyes were always on Yan. Never seemed to notice Sasuke. Of course, Sasuke is his son after all, and as a father, how could he not care? The main purpose of doing this is to stimulate Sasuke. Good. Father, be careful, I'm about to get on. Sasuke made a seal of opposition on the spot, then quickly pulled out kunao and shuriken from the ninja tool bag at his waist and threw them at Fugaku. Hiko is not as polite as Sasuke, and he starts hanging around Fugaku the moment the fight starts. This invisibly added some pressure to Fugaku, who was already there. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Sasuke threw the shuriken and kunao at the same time, but each had a different trajectory in the air. The angle of attack was also tricky, specifically targeting Fugaku's throat, eyes, lower body, and other fatal points. Yanzen had already gone behind his father at this time, but he did not take action immediately like Sasuke. Instead, he was looking for an opportunity, preparing to hit his father hard at the critical moment. The main theme is the love between father and son. Fugaku didn't move at all when facing the shurikens and kunao thrown by Sasuke, and watched the attacks fall in front of him. Ding ding ding, shurikens and kunao fell on Fugaku endlessly, and Sasuke, who was far away, tightened his hands and sweated in his heart. However, the next second, a bang sound was heard from Fugaku's position, and then a piece of wood turned into a wooden stake and fell to the ground with a clang. Yan, if you don't take action now, you won't have a chance. Fugaku's voice suddenly sounded from behind Yan, which made Yan a little nervous. He twisted his body and swung his leg towards the source of the sound. Swoosh! Fugaku raised his arm, blocked Yan's attack with the back of his hand, and grabbed Yan's ankle with his backhand. Then start to comment. The response has been good, but the strength is not enough. Fugaku stepped back and threw Yan away, while his hands began to form seals quickly. Sasuke's childish voice sounded, and Fire Style was released a second earlier. Fire Style Great Fireball technique crashed. The scorching flames caused the temperature in the yard to rise suddenly, and a fireball more than 2 meters in size flew straight towards Fugaku's face. Yan once told him some little tricks, one of which was to prevent the enemy from successfully forming a seal. Certainly. Yan also said that it is best not to shout out the name of the move when performing ninjutsu, otherwise it will be easy for the enemy to dodge or target you. But there is no way. He had made some progress in the Great Fireball technique, and now was a good opportunity to show off. If he didn't shout it out in front of his father, it would be more painful than killing him. Sasuke, remember this. Don't show off your fire style in front of an Uchiha ninja unless you are better than him. Fugaku closed his eyes slightly, and the moment he opened his eyes, the 3 Megatama appeared. He slowly formed hand seals on the spot, and at the moment when the great fireball was about to hit him, he took a deep breath, and spewed out a bigger fireball from his mouth, swallowing the small fireball and attacking Sasuke's position. Swoosh! Almost without warning, a leg appeared in front of Fugaku and stepped straight towards his face. The 3 Megatama in Fugaku's eyes swayed left and right, and the world in his eyes began to slow down at this moment. He turned his body sideways, slightly missing Yan's attack path, and grabbed the child's foot again. This time, he hit it with great force. I must teach this kid Yan a lesson. I have even opened my Sharingan. Why do you always want to rush up and show off your physical skills? Do you really think you are one of those ninja dogs in the village? Yan, are you going to learn shuriken and ninjutsu to deal with the dogs in the village? Yan was captured again. He felt a flash before his eyes and was about to fall to the ground. Fortunately, at this moment, the shadow of a puppy suddenly flashed in his sight. Outside the gate of Uchiha, a brown ninja dog was raising its hind legs, brewing for a long time, ready to pee to relieve the fear in its heart. In the yard, Yan, who was about to be thrown to the ground by his father, closed his eyes and shouted those words with gritted teeth. What are you barking at? Fugaku froze in place when he heard his son's roar, and Sasuke also froze, not daring to breathe. The family education in their family has always been very strict, and as a father, Fugaku's words to his son and wife are like orders. Even Itaki, who is known as a genius, is labeled a rebellious son when he disagrees with his father. And now, Yan actually shouted such words in front of his father. Sasuke really couldn't imagine how he would live in the future. Fugaku's anger suddenly burst out from the bottom of his heart, and the air around him turned cold at this moment. Hiko, if you have the guts, then. Swoosh! Fugaku growled softly, ready to get angry, but the moment he called out Yan's name, the boy actually disappeared out of thin air, and instead a brown ninja dog appeared in front of him with its hind legs raised. Woof, a woo. Guzu's eyes were wide open, and the confusion in his eyes was no less than that of Fugaku and Sasuke. The urge to pee that had been brewing for a long time was suddenly frightened away by the murderous Sharingan. However, the arrow is on the string and will not be shot. Even though the urge to pee was scared away, the dog still urinated on Fugaku's trouser legs intermittently. As for why it was intermittent, it was purely because I was scared. When Sasuke saw this scene, he first felt that a disaster was about to happen, and he was sure to be affected and beaten tonight. Just as I was about to take a step, I realized something was wrong. This is a dog clone? Yan suddenly disappeared and turned into a ninja dog. He had only seen this happen with Nissan. Nissan's ninjutsu is to transform into a crow. I think the principle should be similar. Sasuke's back teeth almost broke as he thought about this. So, Yan, is the cultivation you mentioned these days the dog clone? Hateful. You actually lied to me and said that you were just practicing taijutsu. Fugaku looked down at his wet trouser legs, his fists clenched so hard that his knuckles turned white. The words of the rebellious son just now kept echoing in my ears. If it's not well controlled. His Mangekyo was almost out. But just as the flame of anger was ignited, Fugaku's brows suddenly frowned, but after thinking for a moment, they relaxed. Then, Fugaka threw his head back and laughed as Sasuke looked at him in astonishment. Ha 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 ha. You are worthy of being my son. Good, good, very good. Sasuke? Fugaka laughed and cheered, and Sasuke, who was standing stupidly nearby, was terrified when he saw his father like that. Wow, not only was Sasuke frightened, but the dog, who had just finished peeing, was looking at the laughing Fugaku while moving back cautiously. If you continue to stay, it's not just urine splattering on the spot but blood splattering on the spot. Inside the courtyard, the atmosphere gradually became weird due to Fugaku's wild laughter. Sasuke and the dog seemed to be on the same front. The man and the dog just wanted to escape from this place as soon as possible. Fugaku, still immersed in joy, replayed the events in his mind several times and was convinced that his son Uchiha, the ninjutsu just used, was definitely not some dog clone, but space-time ninjutsu. My son Uchiha Hiko is a genius. When Fugaka thought about having a genius son who created his own space-time ninjutsu, he forgot all his recent annoyance. What are you barking about? Yan's voice sounded again, and the dog, who was moving backwards, disappeared from the spot before he took 3 steps. When Fugaka saw his son using this technique again, his face flushed with excitement and his whole body was shaking with excitement. As for whether a dog is barking or not, it doesn't matter. Fugaka walked quickly up to Yan and raised his hand to grab his shoulder to ask for details. Yangdong had only used this ability twice, and the scene in front of his eyes kept changing, making him feel a little dizzy. I was already feeling very uncomfortable, and my nerves were tense. Now seeing his old father grinning and making a very strange expression, he immediately thought he was caught in some kind of illusion, and raised his hand to punch Fugaku in the stomach. I still used my full strength. Yan, tell, Fugaku opened his mouth, and before he could finish his words, he felt a pain in his stomach and he didn't even have the strength to shout out. He covered his stomach, fell to his knees powerlessly, and looked at Yan with eyes full of surprise and confusion. Yan saw his father fall to the ground after being hit by his punch, and a question mark slowly appeared on his head. No? Father, did you let the water go? After a few seconds of thinking, Yan came up with a situation that seemed outrageous but somewhat reasonable. After all, his father is suspected to have the Mangekyo Sharingan, so he wouldn't be caught off guard and knocked down by one punch from me, right? The water has been released, it must have been released. Sasuke, who was standing nearby and watching the whole process, had a twisted expression when he heard what Yan said. At such a young age, he already began to doubt whether he had fallen into his father's illusion. Cough cough, cough. Fugaku was in a very complicated mood at the moment. He knelt on the ground and coughed madly, almost coughing his throat out. I don't know if he was coughing to cover up his embarrassment or because he was really hurt by the beating. After a few seconds, Fugaku's face turned red. He pretended to be calm, stood up, and brushed the dust off his clothes. Then, he turned around, put his hands behind his back, and spoke with his fatherly authority again. I've been practicing well lately. Hiss. I didn't expect you to be able to see that your father was letting you off the hook. There was absolutely no flaw in what he said, even the sound of the air conditioner being sucked in could not be noticed by Yan behind him. Alright, I still have some stuff to take care of. You and Sasuke should go back and rest. Hiss, I'll talk to you guys later in the evening. After Fugaku finished speaking, he walked into the house in 2 steps without waiting for the 2 brothers to respond. He really wanted to ask Yan what the ninjutsu he had just performed was like. But now he looked a little embarrassed, and he couldn't let the children see him in this embarrassing state, which would damage his majestic image in their eyes. Sasuke, is your dad okay? Yan pointed at Fugaku, who was quickly leaving the scene, and vaguely felt that something was wrong with his old father. Isn't that your dad? Sasuke glared at him and retorted, even wanting to ask why Yan was practicing new ninjutsu behind his back, but he swallowed the words back when they reached his lips. Yan, your dog clone just now, is it great? Hiko. Yan, who was about to go back to his room, almost stumbled and fell to the ground when he heard this. He once thought of naming his moves 2 unpleasant names, Dog Thunder God and Flying Thunder Dog, but I never expected that this skill would be Dog Clone. And there is a strange rationality in this strangeness. Yan's face darkened instantly and he turned around and walked into the room. 1 against 7 taught me that. If you want to learn, go find him. Sasuke opened his eyes slightly, revealing a look of as expected, but he reacted the next second. Hiko, he's your brother too. Don't always fight 1 against 7. Yan, who had just walked into the room, suddenly poked his head out, looked Sasuke up and down, and retorted, I'm still your brother. Cha Knight. Fugaku applied the ointment with the help of his wife, and after a long while he called Yan to the study. The father and son sat face to face at the coffee table, staring at each other for a long time, but no one spoke first. Father, aren't you going to the police station tomorrow? Yan looked up and glanced at the clock, and before he knew it, it was already around 10 o'clock in the evening. Fugaku pondered for a moment, smiled gently, and then spoke. Yan, the technique you used today, what's going on? In order to cover up the ninjutsu used by Yan, he even went to invite back the brown ninja dog that was wandering outside the house. He had observed the ninja dog and found that it had no special markings of the Inyazuka clan, so it was most likely a failed breeding product. Tomorrow he will send someone to the Inyazuka clan to discuss purchasing this ninja dog. The village must never know about Yanhui's space-time ninjutsu, and don't let other people in the clan know about it. This is to protect him and the entire Uchiha. Oh, just swapping positions with the ninja dog. Yan yawned, and his bland words almost made Fugaku clench his fists to teach this brat a lesson. What do you mean by swapping positions? In short, Fugaku thought his son was very pretentious. If Yan knew how his father felt at this moment, he would definitely cry out that he was wronged. After all, compared with the cultivation techniques and the like, the special abilities that come with this achievement title are really nothing. If you give him a book on cultivating immortality, Yan thinks it is much better than this thing. However, he roughly understood how to use the system. As long as he could trigger the system task, no matter how outrageous the task content was, as long as he could get the reward, it would be fine. I believe that in the near future, there will be techniques for cultivating immortals, magic weapons, and fairies. Regarding whether or not to hide his ability from Fugaku, Yan chose to confess directly. After all, no matter what, this kind of thing is better than using this ability in front of outsiders. No matter how little say the Uchiha clan has in the village now, they still have some say. At least, Shisui is not dead yet, and there is still some time before the Uchiha clan is exterminated. My father can still save himself for the time being. Seeing that Fugaku didn't say anything, Yan continued to add, should it be considered space-time ninjutsu? Fugaku was silent for a long time after hearing Yan's answer. He held the cup and thought for 10 minutes before speaking. No, you are a dog clone. It's the same type of ninjutsu as the 1-on-7 crow clone. Fugaku corrected him forcefully, and Yan almost overturned the coffee table in front of him when he heard these 3 words again. But then I thought that my father seemed to be protecting himself by saying this. Can't you just change your name? Yan nodded heavily, took a few deep breaths, and agreed reluctantly and helplessly. Yes, it's the dog clone. Fugaku was quite satisfied with Yan's answer. He picked up the cup on the table and poured a cup of tea for Yan himself. Remember not to mention this jutsu to anyone else, neither Itachi nor Sasuke. Yan took the tea and looked at Fugaku meaningfully, with a hint of worry in his eyes. Family and village, has it come to this? Fugaku sighed as a reply to Yan, then looked at his son opposite him, opened his mouth several times but stopped talking. He really didn't know how to tell these things to his 6-year-old son. Go back and rest. Don't worry about that, I'll take care of it. Yan pursed his lips, wanting to say something, but he was even more worried that his old father would do something stupid like in the original book. At this moment, he really wanted his father to shout, "Don't send it. Please turn on the mic to communicate." However, the moment he looked up, he suddenly noticed that Fugaku had white hair on his temples and a few more wrinkles on his face. Okay, you should rest early too. Yan finally didn't say what was in his mind. He was weak now and still needed his father's protection. Regardless of whether what he said now is credible or not, Fugaku will definitely not let him get involved in the clan's mess in order to protect him. Yan supported his knees, stood up and said goodbye to Fugaku, then pushed open the door of the study. Unexpectedly, Fugaku called him at this time. Hiko. Yan stopped and answered softly. I will protect you. Fugaku was holding the teacup, and as if he had sensed Yan's emotions just now, he explained in a relaxed manner. Yan stood at the door for a long time, and said to Fugaku when he closed the door, I know, I will protect you too. Yan always believed that this father, who usually had a stern face, was very concerned about his appearance and loved to hide his own money, would protect them, and he had no idea what those idiots in the tribe could do. Although I don't want to admit it, I have to say that the Uchiha clan has some problems. In order to open the eyes of future generations, this group of people used all means possible. Of course, to say whether there is anything wrong. There is nothing wrong with them doing this for the power of Sharingan, but it is easy to hurt the fragile hearts of children, and then make the personalities of children who are already affected by Sharingan become more extreme. The Uchiha people, on the other hand, acted arrogantly towards other people in the village. They looked down on people when they walked on the street and completely despised other big ninja clans. They were just short of directly shouting out the position of Hokage can be replaced by the Uchiha. Although some normal people are like this, most of the older generation of the tribe are like this, and they also educate their children in the same way. If nothing goes wrong, then there really is something fishy. Yan's head ached when he thought that he had a brother who might kill his own tribe members in the future, and that there was also a one-eyed traitor Uchiha who might secretly wield a knife against his own tribe members at any time. Shisui. We must find a way to save him. Thinking this, Yan went back to his room and fell asleep. The next day, early morning. Yan, who was sleeping soundly, was awakened by Sasuke's shouting outside the house. He and Sasuke slept in the same room. Yesterday, because the boy was sulking with him, he ran to attack his room with a blanket in the middle of the night to sleep. "Unii-san," he said. "Hurry up and teach me the clone technique. You taught that guy Yan all of it." In the living room, Sasuke was hanging on Itachi, begging to learn the crow clone, making Itachi sweat profusely. It's not that he doesn't want to teach, but Sasuke really doesn't have this talent. "Sasuke, how about I teach you a cool fire style? I use this ninjutsu very often." Sasuke's mouth flattened, his stubborn temper instantly flared up. He turned his head and first refused, then continued yelling, "No, I want to learn how to clone myself." Itachi thought for a few seconds before speaking again. "Then I will teach you an illusion. This illusion is..." Sasuke interrupted him without even waiting for him to speak. "No, I just want to learn how to clone the crow." "Ming Yan, that guy is looking for you to learn how to clone a dog." "Uchiha Itachi?" Yan rubbed his eyes and walked through the living room with sleepy eyes, and happened to see Sasuke acting coquettishly. Itachi looked at Yan in shock, his eyes clearly showed. What the hell is a dog clone? The only dog-related ninjutsu he knew of were those of the Inyazuka clan, but even so, he had never heard of that person being able to perform dog clones. "Morning, Sasuke. 1 against 7. Yan raised his hand to greet him, then looked in Sasuke's direction with some dissatisfaction. "And so early in the morning. Can you please be quieter when you act like a spoiled child?" Sasuke clenched his fists tightly upon hearing that, turned his head away and refused to look at Yan. He didn't want to pay any attention to this guy for the time being. Itachi rubbed Sasuke's head awkwardly and smiled apologetically to Hiko. "Sorry for disturbing your rest." Yan, who was about to leave, suddenly retreated quickly to the living room, took a few steps to Itachi and started to interrogate him again. 1 against 7. If one of Sasuke and I has to die, who do you choose? I didn't hear you call me Nissan either. Sasuke sensed the element and turned his head to look in Itachi's direction, his face even more serious than Yan's. "It doesn't matter whether you live or die." He just wanted to know if his brother loved him the most. The two men stood on Itachi's left and right sides, their eyes fixed on Itachi like a knife, which made Itachi, who wanted to treat him equally, feel nervous. At the same time, he felt helpless about Yan Da's behavior so early in the morning. "Hiko, Sasuke. I just got back from a mission and haven't had breakfast yet." "You haven't eaten yet, right?" Sasuke and Hiko said nothing, just staring at Itachi. The aura emanating from the two brothers was enough to make Uchiha Itachi sweat profusely. Sasuke's eyes flickered with anticipation as he waited for his brother to tell him what he wanted. Yan frowned and stood there looking at this guy for a while, then suddenly chuckled and pretended to be indifferent and walked towards the restaurant. Itachi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. After all, Sasuke was easy to fool, but his other brother was very difficult to deal with. But at this moment, Yan's voice floated faintly from the direction of the restaurant. His tone sounded light, but Yan's sharp questions made Uchiha Itachi's heart tremble. 1 against 7. If you were asked to choose between the village and the tribe members, how do you choose? Itachi's eyes narrowed, and he clenched his hands between his legs, then loosened them when he turned his head to look at Sasuke. He patted Sasuke's head and forced a smile. "Sasuke, go eat first. Yan and I have something to talk about." Perhaps sensing that something was wrong with the atmosphere, Sasuke did not lose his temper. He glanced at Yan, then at Itachi, and nodded vigorously. "Good. Don't quarrel." Sasuke was also in a dilemma for a moment. It was true that he liked and admired his brother very much, but Yan and he are also brothers. Even though Yan always bullied him sometimes, he knew that Yan was really good to him. Waka Hiko and Itachi quarreled. He really didn't know what to do. "My fish-lipped Oyudaudu, how could Itachi possibly win an argument over me?" Yan spread his hands, shrugged his shoulders, and spoke in a strange tone, making Sasuke, who kept looking back every few steps, so angry that he left quickly. Itachi smiled and shook his head at this. Every time he saw Hiko teasing Sasuke, he never knew what to say. But his two younger brothers are so cute. After Sasuke left, Itachi took Hiko to the study, and after they sat down, the two brothers were silent the whole time. Neither side said a word. Outside the study, Mikato and Fugaku were clinging to the study door. Their expressions were extremely serious, and they didn't even dare to breathe heavily, for fear that their eavesdropping behavior would attract the attention of the two brothers inside. After Sasuke left, he was really worried about Yan and his brother, so he ran to notify his parents to check on the situation. At this time, Fugaku's mood was very complicated. From what he heard from Sasuke, he naturally thought of the time when Kazuhiko briefly mentioned the family. He could clearly see that Itachi's stance was gradually shifting towards the village. Although he couldn't figure out Yan's thoughts, it was not difficult to see that the child wanted to protect his family. As for this stance, it should be similar to myself. Fugaku felt extremely relieved when he thought about the talent that Yan had shown a few days ago and was in his shoes. Can. Protecting the family, isn't it so easy? As a mother, Mikato didn't think too much about it and her thoughts were roughly similar to Sasuke's. I just don't want the two brothers to damage their brotherhood because of clan matters. Just as the couple pricked up their ears to listen, Yan's exclamation suddenly came from the study. What? 1 against 7, and there is 100,000 taels of private money hidden in father's kitchen. Fugaku. Fugaku's face outside the door suddenly became gloomy. He cast an anxious look at his wife and opened his mouth to make an excuse. At the same time, he secretly remembered the revenge for his eldest son. Mikato glanced at her husband, then turned her head to show Fugaku and walked towards the kitchen without looking back. The two of them left in tacit understanding, and Itaki in the study room held his forehead and sighed deeply. He knew that Yan did this to get his parents outside the door to leave. But, can you please stop letting him take the blame? Itaki calmed down a little, sat up straight, and spoke to Yan very seriously. Hiko, it's time to open up and have a good chat. After saying this, Itaki was even worried that Yan might not understand what he meant, so he added another sentence. Like adults. Yan nodded, said nothing, and waited for Itaki to continue. He also wanted to hear what Itaki wanted to talk to him about. Father, I told you everything? Itaki knelt in front of the coffee table, his hands on his legs, his fists clenched and shaking. He was obviously dissatisfied with his father telling his younger brother about clan matters. This will harm Yan. Yan looked into Itaki's eyes for a long time. After about a few minutes, he skipped the topic and prepared to talk about Shisui. 1 against 7, can you promise me one thing? Good. Itaki agreed without any hesitation. He didn't even ask what it was. Certainly. If Yan's request was to help his father launch a coup, which was something that touched his bottom line, he would naturally not agree to it. Protect Shisui. At this moment, Yan's gaze was so sharp that even Itaki didn't dare to look him in the eye. Yan already knew what Itaki was saying from the response he gave when he asked him about the village and the tribe members. Itaki would still choose to stand in the village and stop his father's actions. Saving Shisui wouldn't change the outcome, but it can give the Uchiha clan a chance to breathe again and delay the situation for a while, so that the clan members will not lose hope so early and choose to fight a desperate battle with the village. Itaka suddenly frowned, as if he had thought of something, then nodded and agreed solemnly. I will. Don't you have anything else to say to me? Itaki couldn't understand why Yan didn't choose to question him like his father, but just made a request that was not really a request. I hope you can do it. Yan supported his chin with one hand and fiddled with the teacup on the table, looking like he didn't care at all about Itaki's answer. He did not place all his hopes on Itaki to save Shisui. He didn't dare to say too much else. If he said anything, Danzo might attack Shisui, and Yan was worried that Itaki would turn around and run to tell the third generation. Not only will it not change anything, it may even accelerate Danzo's decision to take action against Shisui. No more. I really don't know how to lead you guys, a bunch of pigs. Yan shook his head, muttered to himself, and stood up to leave the study. Yan, we are still brothers, right? Itaki's sudden words did not stop Yan at all, just as the positions between the two were perhaps irreconcilable from the beginning. Let's just say so. The future. Who knows? After Yan left, Itaki sat in the study, thinking for a long time, then packed up his things and turned around to go to the Hokage building. I plan to discuss this with the third generation adults and see if we can think of a gentler way to prevent the conflict between the village and the family.